What's up, y'all? Back again for another episode of Back to the Sports Podcast, Sportscast, episode 3, technically 5. You get the point now if you've been following. I got a couple of more topics I want to kind of wrap up this Super Bowl recap with, and really see if this can go ahead and give me the momentum I need to finally really string along these episodes. I think maybe I'll release these segments individually as episodes, and then maybe drop one where all the segments are just in one video file for people to check out. Haven't fully decided how I'm going to do this, but I do know that this is called the Back to the Sportscast. So, and I realize Back to the Game Sportscast. And so the big theme is like, I want to be able to, while I do have a lot of opinions on everything surrounding the game, I want to also bring the main focus to the actual game and the gameplay. There were so many storylines, so it's a little difficult with the Super Bowl, and it's being covered in every which way. I mean, I've gone back and seen every review, watched all the talking heads say their thing, of which I'm now becoming, I guess. For me, I realize how much of a appropriate path I'm on, because so much of what I said in the previous episodes that I've recorded, because I recorded all these on Monday and Tuesday after the Super Bowl, I heard other people say, and some people kind of not say. So there were definitely some good reviews out there. I like what Colin Coward had to say about the Super Bowl and Pat Mahomes, what it meant for his legacy. I really enjoyed what First Things First did with really trolling Nick Wright. I thought they had a lot of fun. I think they're the most entertaining sports show out there. I really think that they really let themselves have fun with it, even though Nick can be insufferable sometimes. I do like that he owns his bias. He has a clear bias and he owns it, and sometimes it pays off, most times it hasn't, i.e. his Tom Brady takes and his Chiefs recent take. But I do respect that, because I know that I have biases too, and I think it's a great place to come from. People think you can't be objective, and I see a lot of sports people like trying to play all sides, and it's just not entertaining. That's usually the case when former athletes come into the media. They're not really that entertaining, because they're trying to play all sides of the fences. They're not really, they're not a fan, and hey, they played the game. No one knows it better than them, so they have the right to speak on it in any shape, form that they please. But there's something more entertaining about Nick Wright and Stephen A. and the guys who really, at the core, they're fans. They love sports, not because it gave them anything, because they just do. They got a love for the game. So this episode, I kind of want to see if I can just briefly talk about the game itself, and also I want to get into a little bit about Jalen Hurts. I'm really impressed with him. There's nothing you haven't seen or heard about this game. It's the most watched Super Bowl of all time. And the Eagles crushed the Chiefs. I'm going to probably repeat some of the things that you've already heard, maybe not. Hopefully I provide a fresh take or a fresh perspective on it. But for me, it really, really stood out that Patrick and the Chiefs weren't able to adjust to anything that the Eagles were doing, and their preparation just seemed. I just don't think you should be getting blown out in the Super Bowl. However, like one of my last segments about the kind of like the mystical part of sports, which I really like to indulge in and try to explain in as much of a sensible way as possible. I think it was a culmination of their entire season. They were always on the cusp the whole season of being beat. I think there was like at least 6 Chief games that I tuned in on the Gamecast, or just like tuned in on Red Zone real quick, and it looked like they were going to lose, and they wouldn't. And I think it was it was the mystical part of sports that was kind of piling it up. I think Nick Wright said this pretty well, where the 2007 Patriots blew out everybody throughout the whole season, and then were in a tight game at the end and at the doorstep of history and couldn't knock the door down. And then with the Chiefs, it's like they were all in these really, really close games that could have went either way. And if it had gone either way, they might have been out of the playoffs or not. But it was like written in the sports mysticism that they needed to make it to the Super Bowl to experience this heartbreak. Because if they would have lost in the AFC Championship, if they would have not made the playoffs or lost in the divisional round, I think this loss doesn't impact them as much. So we're going to see how they respond. But as far as the game, I think it was just kind of weird to see the Chiefs not adjust. I thought they were much more ahead in their dynasty growth, but I saw a lot of like the first year, second year Chiefs, the beginning of the dynasty, where Pat is just like, he's not really thinking the game. He's kind of relying on his athleticism. And I mean, Philly did have an overwhelming amount of time. I mean, they have a white cornerback who's nasty. I just saw that guy's high school basketball reel. He's just a pure athlete. If white boys are going to start taking over the cornerback position too, man, the NFL's in for something. It was cool to see. I like that kid. But I just think that there's a part of and I think I mentioned this in one of my earlier videos, I think Pat still hasn't developed having a second and third read adjustment play at the line. I think he does still rely heavily on Andy Reid and him calling the right play. But Andy Reid was up against some really good coaching too. Like the defensive coordinator for the Eagles is a journeyman, lifelong football coach who's waiting for this opportunity, has a ton of respect around the league apparently. And he had his work cut out for him. So it was kind of on Patrick to be that coach on the field. And I really do think that Patrick needs to take that next step and start implementing running backs into the passing game. That quick cutter, that the reason why Tom won the Super Bowl against Seattle and then also Atlanta was those running backs, using them in the passing game and then allowing that to open up the running game, the draw game. It's like for Patrick, it's either, Worthy or Kelsey or bust. It's 15 down. That's why he's so good on 3rd and 15s and stuff like that. It's like 15 yards down the field or not. He started kind of dinking a lot using his slant routes, but I think there's another level he can go to where he can manipulate the matchups. He can see, okay, this front four is killing me. I need to get rid of the ball before they even get to me, and hope that by the end of the game they're tired. And now I can start opening up. Now Kelsey's down the field. Now Worthy's down the field. And I think that surgical way of playing, it just seems so hard for guys to do. And I don't know if it's an ego thing for quarterbacks or if it's just like I'm not in the NFL. I've never played in the NFL. Maybe it's just one of those things that's much easier said than done. But with that being said, I do think that is what is required to really elevate, because you're gonna go into Super Bowls where you're not the better team. And if you're gonna be one of the greats, you gotta be the reason they overcome. And I'm not gonna be too hard on Patrick. He has 3 Super Bowls, and he's been the reason for 3 of those Super Bowls. But he really got exposed this game, and we'll see where he goes. A big thing for Patrick now is going to be how he takes care of his body and how much film he's willing to indulge in. Because to catch Tom, you got to play for a long time. And, the NFL is a rough sport. You think a guy's going to play 20 years, but that's not guaranteed. Look at Aaron Rodgers, fell off a cliff. The thing that they would say Tom was going to do, he actually did. 1 year to the next, just not Aaron Rodgers anymore. And he didn't even, what was this, like year 16, 17 as a starter? So we'll see where this goes for Pat. But I think just analyzing the game, they were outmatched, but they were also outwitted, particularly at the quarterback position. I think Pat needs to revisit how he's studying the game and how he's studying an opponent he's about to face, because it does seem, even in the Super Bowls that he won, it does seem that if a team has time to prepare for him, they give him fits. The Niners gave him a couple of those Super Bowls. The Niners beat themselves. In the last Super Bowl against the Eagles could have easily won. Jalen Hurts outplayed him. So I think Pat really has to, and the Chiefs in general, really have to try to find a way not to be so gimmicky and really develop. Pat needs to develop himself as a coach on the field. I think and this is where the talking heads really drive me nuts. I think it drives me crazy when they talk about he's the best we've ever seen, only because he's the most athletic we've ever seen. He can throw the strongest, and then he also has legs, and he can throw sideways, and he's all these other things. But that is not what the quarterback position is about. That's like saying he's the best chess player we've ever seen because he can move the pieces really fast. It's not about the speed. It's about the processing and the consistency and the ability to galvanize and lead men. Now, Patrick is definitely in the stratosphere of top 5, top 10 all time at that. But the premature, the best we've ever seen is it really discounts the mental side of the game, I think, and the mental growth of the game. The reason why Michael was the best, in my opinion, was because he was the perfect combination of the mental and the physical. He had both. The reason why Tom is the best, but had so many naysayers, is because he was mostly mental. He had a great arm, underrated accuracy. I mean, people really don't realize how good of a thrower of the football Tom Brady was. But his superpower was always his processing power and his cool, calm collectedness under pressure. He was rarely rattled, maybe once or twice in his entire career. And even then, he could have won those games. So I think Pat really needs to grow as a processor, and really needs to start working actually on his footwork in the pocket too. I think he needs to learn how to climb the pocket a little bit better. I mean, none of what I'm saying, I'm actually sitting here critiquing Patrick Mahomes. He's fucking awesome. All of this is just, we're talking about like that. I love that quote Will Smith talked about. He was at a premiere. I think he was at Independence Day premiere, and he was talking to one of the producers, and they had like a screening or something of the film, and Will Smith went up to me and was like, "Wow, man, it looks 90% of the way done." And then I think the producer, I'm not butchering this, but I think the producer was just like, "Yeah, guess we're halfway there." That last 10% is the hardest, and I know that to be true of my own art form. And what I do is like, you grow exponentially when you get into it and you start going, and your natural talent takes over, and then you're learning. But then that difference between the Daniel Day-Lewis's and the others is really, really small. And I think the difference between Tom and Patrick is really small, but that also makes it really big, because that last, Tom said it in his interview. I guess this is becoming a really Tom Brady centered, but we're talking about the Super Bowl. I feel like they should name the freaking MVP trophy after Tom. Like, dude, he went to 10. So anyway, maybe because it's a Super Bowl, but I do like the analogy of this, and this is who everybody's comparing Pat to. So let's stick to it. I think Tom spoke about it. He said, it took me from year 10, 11, when I lost to the Giants those 2 times, to when I faced him in my last Super Bowl to figure out Steve Spagnuolo. So, Tom's story is already written, so he has the advantage, and Pat's still being written. But man, like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, this goes for them too. Joe Burrow, although I do think like come on, since he get him a defense, because I think out of all the quarterbacks, I think he's the closest as far as processing and playing the quarterback position in a new yet traditional way. But if, the Chargers, like if those guys start stepping up, it's not going to be easy sledding. Pat might not see another Super Bowl for a while. I don't know. Maybe I'm hoping here, but maybe it's also a good prediction. I'm not sure. Anyways, I'm going to cut this episode now. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Thanks for the support. I guess I haven't said this in any of the episodes. Like and subscribe. If you like what I'm saying, and contact, share. I'm hoping to continue to bang these out. And leave a comment and tell me what you think about what I said. Now in my next episode, I did want to get into it in this episode, but my next episode, I'll go ahead and get into some Jalen Hurts stuff. He's awesome. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Peace.